We're doing dehydrating today. So I tried very hard to bring my kitchen today so I could show you the tools that I have. You don't need all of these tools, but I wanted to give you an idea of these things and how they work so that as you're trying to figure out what it is that you want to be able to do at home, what things you'll need. So one of the first things that I want to show you is a dehydrator. So this is the dehydrator that Dr. Couri has, and hers is a Nesco dehydrator. And on the top of her dehydrator, it has the information for what temperature you're going to set it at and what temperatures you want to do certain foods at. That's very helpful. My old Nesco dehydrator had the whole battery and fan on the bottom, but this one's on the top. So this one actually blows the air down through the food. And then it comes with racks like this. Now you can buy special things for these racks. One of the things that's really helpful if you're going to make things like fruit leather or jerky is one of these plastic trays that you slip in here, and the plastic tray will hold that moisture and things won't drip through. But they also make, I'll show you with my dehydrator, fine mesh rings that you can put in here. So if you're dehydrating something that would be, maybe it would have spices or herbs that are tiny and small, that will help to hold that. And then you just stack all of your trays on here together, and then you put the lid on and plug it in, and then you just have to watch it for the amount of time I think it's going to take to do the project. The dehydrator that I have, my kids bought this one for me for Christmas. So this is actually a really nice one. It's called Sedona, and I really recommend that when you get a dehydrator, you just sit down with your instruction sheet and go through it so that you know what your tools are and how to use them. This particular one has an on-off switch. When the door is shut and it's on, I can use a set button to change my temperature, and then I can use a set button to change the amount of time on it. And then I can also change the tray so that I'm dealing with top trays or bottom trays with both. And then I can put the start button. But always while the dehydrator is going, I can open it and I can see what's going on inside of it so that I can pull things out if it looks like they got to the right dryness. So the first thing we're going to start doing with you is apples. After we get some of these projects going and into the dehydrators, I'm going to go through a slideshow. But I want to do apples because it's the season. So last night I put some apples into my dehydrator and they have come out. So you can see right here how they look. And what I did with the apples was when I put them on here, they normally look white, but I sprinkled them with some cinnamon. So Dr. Couri is going to do apples over here, and we're going to demonstrate how different ways that you can prep the apples for dehydrating. I like mine to have just a slight chewy consistency because that's what the kids enjoy. And once they come out of the dehydrator, then you have to do something with them. So I'm just going to show you that after it comes out of the dehydrator, there, if you want to come up and hold this. I generally don't want to handle the food very much with my fingers once the project is done. So I'm just going to take this off and dump it into a bowl. Okay. And then this is that mesh I was talking to you about. Do you see how nice that is? It's so fine, and it works really nicely for taking care of very fine things like the herbs. So once this is in the bowl, then I can transfer it to some kind of a bagging system or some kind of a jar system. So we do want to demonstrate making a bag for you. So we're going to do that in a few minutes. But in the interim, I'm just going to set them into a jar and get this out of the way. And then Dr. Couri, while I'm doing that, is going to start with the apples here.
So of course you have to wash your apples and dry them off. And if you have an apple that has a little bit of friends in it, like worms, my grandfather used to say, if the worms like the apples, they're good. So it's not bad to have an apple with worm holes in it, but you can trim that after you get it sliced. So this is a really nifty Pampered Chef apple corer and slicer, but you can do it by hand. Take a knife and just peel it by hand, cut the core out. But you have one of these handy things, it makes it a lot easier. So we're going to line up the apple like this, where the stem is lined up with this hole here, and the bottom part of the core is lined up with this skewer type thing. So kind of like you just kind of eyeball it like a pool ball and kind of get that stem headed for the circle here. And then you're just going to skewer the apple onto there like this. Now this device is your cutter here. So we're going to release this. And we're just going to kind of hold this as we turn until we make contact with the cutter. Here we go. And once we've made contact with the cutter, we can let go. And it will peel. I'm sorry, that's the peeler. It's not cutter, but it's the peeler. And then we go through the cutter. Now, sometimes your apple is soft. And when your apple is soft, it's the best you can do. So we're going to take this out by releasing this lever here and pulling back on here. And we're going to take what we got, and the rest we're going to do by hand. So I'm going to take this off. Oh, there we go. And I'm going to just finish the rest on hand.
And you don't have to peel them.
No, you don't.
You could leave some of that peel on.
Mm-hmm. We're going to do one that's not peeled at all. But I personally like the peel because the peel has apple pectin in it. It's got most of the minerals in there. It also, apple pectin can bind spike protein. So there's a lot of benefits to leaving the peel on. So we're just going to slice it.
And try to shoot for slices about as thin as what you were seeing with the other. Oh, those are gone.
All right, now I'm going to core this a little bit because I'm a little bit left in there. And we're going to put them in some lemon water to keep them from getting brown right here. Just a little bit of lemon with water.
So we use this lemon juice, and I put about a tablespoon of that into this measuring cup of water. But sometimes I'll just use the citric acid that you can find in the canning section and put a tablespoon of that in. And that will just to help them from becoming brown. It's just for cosmetics, really.
This one I'm not going to peel, so I'm going to pull this back and keep it out of the way. And I'm just going to leave the grape apple skin on. And we're going to just line it up again. I hope that the apple is not soft. We have to get it all the way through the slicer. And then when it's through the slicer,
pull the apple off first. It's really nice to do that.
There we go. And we take the core, and then we're going to release this, pull it back. And here we have an awesomely sliced apple. So I'm just going to cut it right in half. And in it goes to the lemon water.
Okay, so Dr. Couri is going to slice a couple more apples, and then we'll put them on the tray. And while she's doing that, Geneva's going to help me with showing you some of our herbs, and you'll be manning the camera.
Sounds good.
So Geneva, you want to open up the dehydrator. So there's two trays of herbs in the dehydrator. The top tray of herbs, if you want to take the top one out, this is parsley. Now this is, I have some fresh parsley for us here as well that I've washed and I've put in the spinner. And this parsley has been drying, and it only took like an hour and a half for it to dry. It really did well. So what I'm going to do with the parsley is I'm going to take the tray, I don't know if the tray goes, and I'm going to put the parsley into my blender. I have a Vitamix blender here. And the Vitamix comes with a blender portion for dried foods. Yeah, I'm going to put that right back into the dehydrator. And so we're going to see if we can get this all blended down into a nice fine powder. There. Now with the Vitamix, sometimes you have to tap things down. Sometimes it just works really well. You could crush this just with your hand, put it in a bag and use a rolling pin and crush it. I like the fine curly parsley, but this parsley that I thought was one of the coarser textured ones, but it's pretty good. Okay, so Geneva, if you want to just demonstrate turning it on, this is this one's off. This is on off. Okay, there you go. Yep, flip it up. And then if you want to turn this up just a little bit. And you see as it's taking it, it's just pulling it all down into the blender there. And it's just turning it into a really fine parsley. Okay, now you can turn it off. Great. And then we can grab a jar for me over there too. Now we're going to transfer this over into a jar, and I'm going to seal this jar with a vacuum sealer. And I want to just demonstrate to you how I do that. So if you would like to open that for me. When you're putting things into a vacuum sealer, you want to also hold as much oxygen out as possible. So these little oxygen packets that you can buy online, you're familiar with them because you've seen them always in your supplements, right? Mm-hmm. So you put one packet in there, and then you seal that back up so it doesn't get moisture. And then I'm going to put all of my herbs into this jar. So now I've got some lovely parsley. And then I'm going to put the snap lid on top. And then we're going to try to demonstrate the really fun part. Machine that we have. This brand that I have is called Food Saver. So it's just a company called Food Saver. And it's a vacuum sealer. And it comes with a connecting cable here. And you put that into the accessory port. You have to put it in until it kind of snaps. And then I bought this separate kit that had these lids that you can put on to the jar and cover over. You put this in, and then when you press vacuum seal, you'll watch it suck the air out, and when it stops running the vacuum seal, that lid should be sealed. So I'm just going to press it, and so we'll see what happens here. Like it's taking too long. There, you kind of hear it when it's changing.
Hear the difference?
Yeah. Hear the difference. Okay, so it just didn't. Okay, now I'm going to take this off and release the pressure. And when I take this off, it is sealed. Look at that.
That's awesome.
Isn't that awesome? I know, it's just amazing. So again, you would not store this with the ring cap on, but once you open it and start using it, you would put your ring on, and then you could keep this in the cupboard for a very long time. But some foods, once you open it, like I'll be showing you a little bit later my bone broth and my eggs, once you open them, I would keep them in the fridge and use them up quickly. Okay, so that's kind of fun. The other thing we do with the vacuum sealer, which Geneva and I are going to show you, is we can seal the bag of apples that we did. So this comes with a roll, and this roll is that special plastic that's kind of thick, and you put the roll through here, and then you decide how big of a bag we want. And I'm just going to make a bag maybe this size, and I cut it off, and then I take one end of this and I press it right over here. This is where the sealer is. It's going to melt the plastic together. So I'm going to close the lid, latch it, and press the seal button, and it's going to create a seal along there. And then, Geneva, would you get the apples? They're in the jar there. Okay, as soon as this light comes off, then I'll know that the end of this bag is all sealed and ready. Okay, it turned off. So let's check and make sure it works. Yep, that's sealed. Okay, now we have a bag. And these come in different sizes. So we're going to pour our apples in that we had just taken out of the dehydrator. Great. Geneva, would you get one of those oxygen packets for me? So she's going to open up the Ziploc, and we're going to get one packet out and slip it in. Wonderful. All right. Now this tool is fairly new to me. I've watched people use these sealers before and thought, gosh, it looks so good. I'll bet you can store food a lot longer with them, and you really can. So I'm really getting used to this myself, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. There's a trough in here, which is the trough that sucks the air out. So according to the instructions, we want the edge of our bag to sit right over that trough. So if someone wants to pull the lid down now, I'll get my fingers out of the way. There. Now I'm going to latch it shut. So two parts to this. I'm going to press the vacuum seal, and then after it finishes sucking all the air out, which you're going to watch it do, then it's going to turn on to the seal. and it'll finish sealing it for us. So here we go. You see how it sucks all that air out? It just looks so great, doesn't it? So pretty. So pretty. Now the red light is on, so it's sealing it. We did this one earlier today just to test it out and to figure out that we were doing it all correctly. There, the seal is done. So I'm going to flip it open, and there it is. So I'm going to hand it to Geneva to write apples and 9/22 on it. So date everything that you have, okay? Yay. There you go. All right, so we're coming back to Dr. Couri here. So she has all of these apples soaking in the water. And, okay, I'll take all your rubbish. And now you want to get a tray.
Yeah. And then we're just going to line the tray with apples. So here we go. You don't want to have them overlapping too much. So you just want to kind of put them right next to each other.
Core, I should have brought it, but it's just a metal tube with a knob, and you put it on the apple and you just poke that core right out of it, and then you could slice them into circles, and you could do that way.
Yeah.
And then there's also a little tool that you can get. You set the apple on the table and you go down on top of it, and that will make slices with it. Those slices will be too fat for this dehydrator, but then you could go and slice each slice by 3, and then you would have wedges. And wedges would be okay on this as well. Okay, so we're going to put that one over top of this.
If you want to sprinkle it with some cinnamon or spice mix like this, then you
fingers dry.
Yeah,
this is a spice mix of cinnamon, cloves, nuts, nutmeg, and allspice. There's no sugar in it. It just gives a little bit of color and flavor to them, which is really nice. Okay, I'll take that from you.
I think it's better if you can use organic apples when you're doing this, because
especially if you want to leave the peels on.
Yes, because apples are on the dirty dozen. You all know what the dirty dozen are, right? They're the ones that have the most pesticide, and the EWG, Environmental Working Group, puts out every year the top pesticide foods and the ones that are the cleanest. But apples are usually always on the dirty dozen. So especially if you're leaving the skin on, I think you should have organic apples.
Great. Now, while she's finishing that, I'm going to swing over here and show you one more type. So, the next tray down. This is sage. Now, I grew sage this year. I really like using sage. This is a very big leafed plant, as you can see. And so when I took the sage, I just gave it a rinse off. I spun it in my spinner. I love using this spinner. It really dries things out well. And now, actually, let's do it the same way. I'm not really touching it. So there's a couple little parsley leaves in here. I will dehydrate different foods at the same time in my dehydrator. You can slip that back in. Especially if I don't think that there's going to be a bad mixture of flavors from that. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing with the sage and get this running, and Dr. Couri is going to set her machine up. Both at once, okay? Turn up the dial. Okay, so now what I want to show you is yesterday I did the other tray of sage and I put them into this jar. And sage is very fluffy after you do this. So I'm actually just going to open this jar and then we're going to reseal it again. And I think that would be an okay thing to do. So when you open a jar, you just want to hook underneath the edge of it and open it like that. Okay, so now we're going to take the sage that Janine just helped me do, and we're going to spoon it into the jar, and then we're going to re-vacuum seal it. It smells really good. When you've got your own fresh spices from the garden, they are so fresh, and you know, you know where they came from. You know how clean they are. Okay. And I feel like it's okay to pack the sage in just a little bit. So here's one little piece that didn't quite it blended down. It's a little stem. I can take it out. I can leave it in. You know, it's just as nice. And I already labeled it yesterday, so I'm going to use the same seal. Now, should you use the same seal? I'm going to see how well it seals. Generally, I don't seal with the same sealer twice. So you want to take that over.
Set this to 135, because that's what it says for fruits and vegetables. And I'm gonna let this run for about 8 hours. So I'm gonna plug it in now. It's about 9:30. So about 5:30, I will
keep checking on it.
Yep.
Okay, so now I have a smaller one of these caps that fits the small ring. So as you can see, we have wide mouth and we have the normal narrow mouth. All right. And fun fact, in Canada, we have a medium mouth. Just saying, but they don't have a snap lid for that. Okay, Geneva, do you want to do this one? Go ahead and stick it right in there and push it down firmly. I have to clip the on switch here. I think so. Let's just see. You might have to wait a little bit as we go. You can usually hear the tone of it going. Yeah, okay. And then take this out so that we break the seal. There. And now go ahead and get that lid off. It's kind of firm. See, if this didn't come off while she took that off, it's sealed. Okay. And this one says sage, and we're going to label this one with a pen if you don't mind. Parsley 922. All right. Great. So those are some of the fun tools and equipment. Now I'm just going to show you with my dehydrator. Sorry, I want to get a tray here. Over this side. So show everybody what the tray looks like, what the fine mesh looks like.
So we have the tray here with the fine mesh.
Sometimes I use a tray without the fine mesh as well.
This is great for herbs again, this fine mesh. And this is for fruit leather or jerky where you can just spread it on there.
And then I wasn't really happy with the fruit leather thing, so I went online and I bought these. And they had a little lip on them. And there were two kinds available. The kind that was no stick had a warning on it that it causes cancer. The kind that wasn't no stick did not have that warning. So who knows? I bought the regular one, and so if I'm going to make fruit leather, I'm going to spray it with my olive oil spray, and then it just comes off really nicely. And then all of this is really easy to wash in the sink full of hot water. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to set all the parsley onto this tray, and then we're going to get it set up into our big dehydrator here.
Do it right here.
So
these are huge parsley.
They're huge parsley leaves, but don't break them off. And when I'm doing the leaves like this, I usually take the big long stems off, but I leave short stems on because once I run it through a blender, that's just part of the parsley. The flavor is all there. You can do cilantro the same way. I would put it off and just kind of spread it out. We're only going to put a couple of trays in, so it's okay if this tray is really fluffy, like if we have an inch worth of loose stuff on it, because we can skip a shelf and then go up to the next level. So we'll do one tray like that.
We did have one question.
Yeah.
The question, we had a question in the chat, and the question is if we can use these oxygen absorber pads more than once.
I think so. Yes. And the other thing that's fun, Holly, do you want to show them the other bagging system there?
Sure.
Okay. I don't have the tool to go with this bag system, but
so this is another example of a vacuum seal bag. It has a little attachment here, and this is where the vacuum seal is done. It's a, what would you call it, a portable? Like it's a very small tool. We can, yeah. So, but these bags also can be reused. You can wash them and then reuse them. So it's kind of neat. Once you invest in the bags, you can reuse them, which is nice.
There should be a tool with my machine. It's probably in the box, but you can buy that, the tool to do that. This is a small $20 handheld unit to do that.
Yep.
And that's just really nice if you can just keep reusing those bags. Wow.
Yep. And the brand is the Food Saver.
Okay, there's one more thing I'm going to show you that I've never done before, but we're doing it today. And that's nuts. So I bought the cashews. I'm pretty sure I got this from Aldi's. These are raw cashews. And the recipe calls for 4 cups of cashews to half a gallon of water. So I did 1 cup of cashews to like 3 cups of water with some salt. And I let that soak for 7 hours. Now, these cashews soaked up the water. Like, they are big. Yeah, compared to...
Yeah, they are big.
Yeah, they are. Compared to the original size of the cashew, these really did soak up. So I took that this morning then, And if you open this up and look at these cashews, they are kind of soft. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to put them on a dehydrated tray. And I'll just leave this mesh on. I think it'll be okay to do it like that. And because we want to do nuts at a lower temperature, my parsley is going to take a little longer to go because I'm going to set my machine at 110 degrees. Okay, so cashews are on the tray now. We're going to put them into the dehydrator. So we have 3 trays in there now. We have 2 of the parsley, 1 of the cashews. Yeah, okay, so now if you close it, now you can press the set button. Keep it in the middle. And then you can move the temperature up and down. And if you want to go down with the temperature to about 110 or 105, 100, yeah. Okay, now press set again. And then I would leave it at 8 hours because I'm going to keep an eye on this. So press set again and then press start. All right, that machine is going. Now, why do you want to dehydrate nuts? What's the point in doing that? The point in buying raw nuts is that these nuts are still alive and living organisms still have their enzymes in them, and that's actually helpful for you to digest them. But nuts and seeds and beans or legumes all and wheat, like berries of grains, all have lectins and phytates in them. These are anti-nutrients. These are the chemicals that hold those seeds in dormancy until they're ready to grow. So when you put them in water and soak them, you're actually sprouting them. And I'll say that with quotes because we don't soak these things long enough to actually develop a sprout, but we soak them long enough to deactivate the lectins and the phytates so that the enzymes that are in that become activated. And we get rid of those anti-nutrients that can be hard on the stomach. So sometimes one of the things that we'll talk about with our patients when it seems like we're not getting beyond the issues with their bowel is getting rid of these foods in the diet. And I think that's one of the reasons why the paleo diet is nut-free, legume-free, grain-free. Oh no, it has nuts, but it's legume and grain-free, right? So if you soak the nuts for 7 hours and then you dehydrate them at about 110, you're going to maintain those good enzymes. They're going to be dry like a nut like you want. And if you want to roast them after that, then you can turn up the temperature and you can go a little bit higher, but I probably wouldn't go above 145 or 150 because then you could start getting into the temperature where you're going to be damaging the oils. And that is one of my concerns about roasted nuts that you buy commercially. They're at a high temperature and the oils in them may not be as healthy as the oils in the ones that you're doing, okay? Now you can do this in your oven as well. I like, if I'm gonna do something like this, a convection oven. The problem with the oven is it just doesn't have a low enough setting to do some of these. So a dehydrator, you can get down to 110 and that works nicely. I want to show you a couple of other things that you can get. Of course, large mouth jars can come in different sizes, so can small mouth. So this is a quart, this is half of a pint, and then there's a size in between. Normally you would use a regular snap lid on it, but you can buy plastic lids to put on it, and you can actually buy these lids. These are really fun. These lids have a little pour spout. So if you're putting something in here that you might want to just use by pouring, like a drink, or maybe I've dehydrated something and I want to be able to pour it out to measure it and not handle it and open it as much, you can get lids like that. So I just wanted you to be aware of that as well. What's that? You can. And you put your cucumbers in there and your apples and you get all that lovely flavored water. So it can be very good for that. Okay. Let's see. I think we've done everything that we need to do for the demonstration. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you for your help. So now I'm going to go through the slideshow. Now, some of the things that we'll talk about in this slideshow you've just seen demonstrated, so I'm not going to belabor the discussion on those particular things. What are the advantages of dehydrating food? Well, you can preserve the food for months and even for years. And the equipment is pretty easy to use. It's relatively inexpensive. Storage doesn't require freezing or refrigeration in general. And that's really very nice because now you can have things stored on your shelf that can last a long time. You can take it in the car. You can take it on camping trips. You can send it for lunch at school. It's very easy to use these foods. And then no sugars, no additives, no preservatives, no chemicals, unless you choose to put that in, but you'll know. And there's a low risk of bacterial contamination. And of course, this food is light and portable. How long does dehydrated food last? Well, surprisingly, it can last up to 5 years. And part of that depends a little bit on the following 4 items: how you prepare it, the temperature you dry it at, the moisture content of the food, and then how you pack and store it. So we want to try and use organic foods if we can, but at least as fresh as possible. So when I drove in today, there's a farmer's market. I'm heading back over there because I want to pick up some things that I wasn't able to grow in my garden. But this head of cauliflower came out of my garden 2 weeks ago. And so I picked it and I took it in the house and I started using it right away. I'll be showing that to you. You want to wash the foods. If you want to soak them in an organic produce wash to lift the pesticides, you can do that. Please remember that the organic foods that you buy in the grocery store are handled by hands that are handling the non-organic food. So don't think you can come home and not wash that food. I think you should wash that food as well. Handle it as little as possible. You saw Dr. Couri wearing gloves. I'm trying not to handle the food when it comes out of the dehydrator. The oils and the bacteria on the hands will shorten the shelf life. You can remove the cores, you can seed it, you can peel it, whatever you want. You can leave it unpeeled. And then if you want to use a bath to keep it from browning, you can do that. And then just follow the instructions on your dehydrator. A lot of foods are dehydrated between 125 and 135. And if you do go with higher temperatures, like let's say, I don't know that I would ever do this, but let's say I had a batch of jerky and I wanted to put my apples in there too. Well, the whole thing would be at about 170 degrees, and that might toughen the skins on the apples. So all right. When you're packing, you can use Ziploc bags, and those are great if you're not keeping for a long time, or regular bags that you just twist tie. Then you can vacuum seal, which we demonstrated to you. You can use the oxygen absorbers, which will add a little more longevity to that. And then you can seal it in the jars. And then there's just pictures here of all the different things. Now, one thing I didn't show you yet was a Mylar bag, and there's one right there. I'm going to get to that in a few minutes. If you can still see me here, this is a Mylar bag that I put eggs into after I did a freeze drying of some eggs. And when you put the Mylar bag into, you Ziploc it, and then you put this into a sealer, and you seal that edge of the Mylar bag. This thing is ready to stay on my shelf for the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. But when I open this one, I'm going to put it in the fridge because it's eggs. And the other thing I just want to say is also, if you're handling food when the humidity is really high, especially if the food is cold, like if it comes out of a freeze dryer and it's cold, you could get condensation, and that could shorten your dry time. So you want to warm that up so you're not getting that condensation. Okay. Now, the foods that you can dehydrate, there's quite a few. Fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, herbs, roots, meats like jerky. For the fruits, they're very low fat, so they have a high acid content. That makes them really nice for dehydrating, and they're a great snack. And I'm going to encourage you all to start making granolas and trail mixes with all these wonderful foods that you're doing. And there's so many. I have never dehydrated watermelon, but I'm guessing you can do that. I know some of it I'm like, I don't know if I would do that, but you could. This is the time of year to run to Door County and get your cherries and dehydrate some cherries. And how good that would be in your fruit leather, or cherries in your fat bombs would be really good. Okay, so remember when we showed you the tray that has that plastic sheet, this is me spraying olive oil onto the plastic sheet. And now I am just pouring the peaches that I put into the blender. So sometimes in the fall, like right now, if we have a lot of apples, I will make a lot of applesauce and can it. Then the next summer when this fruit comes available, I won't do pure peaches. I will do half and half peaches with applesauce, and it stretches the fruit a little further. It's still really delicious. It's a great way to use the applesauce. The kids really love it, and I rarely add any seasoning, but if I did, I would probably just add cinnamon, maybe some nutmeg to that. Now, here it came out. Now, I have that spatula thing that I can use to start lifting it off. This peeled off really nicely. It just, because I had sprayed it with the olive oil, it just peeled off well. I laid it on wax paper and I rolled it up, and then I just stuck it into a Ziploc bag. But before you roll it up, if you want to just take your pizza cutter and cut it into strips and get it ready for snacking, that's great. A question, yes.
Is there a concern about how much nutrients are lost in the dehydration process?
Yes, there's less nutrients lost in dehydration than there are in canning. Freezing is probably on par with dehydration, except over time in the freezer you will have more loss with time. And the very best nutrient preservation is freeze drying, which I'm going to get to in here. So I would say dehydrating is keeping the best of your nutrients in. So I don't think there's much to demonstrate here. You saw this whole demonstration. Vegetables have a little bit less acidity. They can take longer than fruits, and you might need to blanch them first, so I'll show you that here coming up. And this helps to maintain the nutrients and the texture. I am going to try sun-dried tomatoes in the dehydrator this week because I have lots of tomatoes left over and I do like using them in recipes. So here's some other options that you can. I also went out to the garden yesterday and pulled in some zucchini and yellow squash. And sometimes you just, too much of that stuff. But if you can dehydrate a bunch of that, then you can use it all winter. And if you dehydrate the slices and circles, it's ready to make into a ratatouille or something like that. So it's not hard to use this stuff and make it almost like summer is all year long. So this is my daughter-in-law, Jenny. She is taking the kale from the garden and she is mushing it all up there for us and getting it ready to dehydrate. I think I have a demonstration of her doing kale chips here, but I'm looking to see if I have a video. Maybe I don't have a video. So with the kale chips, she has a very simple recipe of olive oil and balsamic vinegar, and then she likes to put brewer's yeast on it. So if you haven't seen this product, I want you to check it out. This is called nutritional yeast. The reason why they put nutritional yeast into foods is to give it a sort of a taste of cheese, and it's very nice. And if you put the nutritional yeast into the sauce and the spices that you're putting on the kale chips, and then you go to eat that, and there's some you can try there, it is so good. I mean, the kids really love it.
A small container of Vitafloss?
Yes, you can get small containers of it. I got this big one a year ago, and I'm still using it. But you can buy it in a smaller container. So that's nutritional yeast.
You can use that in sauces, like homemade sauces too.
Yes.
So any sauces that need to be dairy free, but you want a cheesy type flavor, that's a good.
Okay, so if you heard Holly there, she's just saying homemade sauces that are dairy free, but you want a more cheesy flavor, you can just throw this in as well.
Some people put it on popcorn as well.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
on popcorn would be good too. And that is Saccharomyces boulardii. It's actually the same yeast as we have in your probiotic, is what nutritional yeast is. Okay. Soaking nuts and seeds, that makes them easier to digest. The nutrients are better absorbed by the body, and then you can redehydrate them so they can be crunchy because we don't like them mushy, we like them crunchy. And make your own trail mix. You can make nut butters as well. And I have done that with cashew, and cashew nut butter, seriously, is like cookie dough. It is so delicious. Oh my gosh, it's so delicious.
How long does it last? I'm assuming you put it in your fridge then.
Mm-hmm.
How long will it last?
Actually, no, I keep it on the cupboard.
You keep it on
Yeah,
the cupboard after this?
yeah. Yeah, and I don't know
You
how
eat it.
long it lasts because it gets eaten. Yeah.
It lasts however many people
Right.
are home.
So all sorts of nuts and seeds that you can do this with. Oh, there's something else you can do with your nuts, and I didn't mention it on this last page, but you can make nut milk as well. So you can take the nut after you have soaked it, like we did here, and then I wouldn't soak, if I was going to make nut milk, I would not soak it with salt in it. I would just soak it overnight. Then I would throw it in the Vitamix blender and blender all of that up until those nuts are just pulverized. And then you let that soak maybe, I don't know, 16, 24 hours. You can find recipes online for this. And then you strain it. And now you have your nut milk. So if you like cashew milk, you can do it that way. And then you can dehydrate what's left over after you strain it onto that flat tray. And when that's all dehydrated, now you have what you're going to use for coating. If you're going to be putting a coating onto, I had breaded eggplant yesterday. It was really good. Or if you want a breading that you're going to do on chicken. So that's what you can use these nuts for afterwards. So don't waste anything. Next page. So we're going to soak a certain amount. The recipe you have it there, 4 cups and some water with sea salt, and then up to 7 hours. And then the ideal temperature for dehydrated nuts is around 110. 150 is permissible. That will be a little bit more like a roasted nut. The enzymes will be mostly preserved at that lower temperature. All right, and the herbs are great. You've seen us just now with a couple of herbs, but you can be very clever about all the different herbs that you use. We have a lot of mint in our garden, so we'll be doing up a lot of mint for tea for this fall as well. And we have a lot of basil as well, so do that with your basil too.
Do you just put your mint in like a tea, or do you mix it with other?
I don't mix it with anything else. I just
mint,
and I just put it into a tea ball and just drink it that way. Mm-hmm. Okay, so basically you saw this demonstrated all well, so I don't have to show you I don't have to show you that again. This is just us putting it through the ceiling. And now roots. Haven't done this yet myself. I was so intrigued when I saw that picture because when those roots come in the store, you can get turmeric, you could get ginger. I haven't seen echinacea root. I tried to grow echinacea this year to get the root. It is actually the root of the echinacea that gives you all of the medicinal benefits. But if you dehydrate that, you can imagine how great that would be just to open up a jar and take a couple of those dehydrated pieces and throw them into the tea you're drinking or into the foods that you're making. So that will make it last a long time. All right, jerky. We had so much fun making jerky. So we got a meat grinder and we took all those loose pieces of venison that we had from the deer that the boys got, and we ran it through and added it to the beef that we had. So we did, pork. So we did a combination of venison and pork. It was a 2-to-1 ratio. And then on the same day, my son ran to Fleet Farm to get one of these jerky cannons. This was a really helpful instrument. So we did the jerky this way. You can also do jerky just by slicing your meat and marinating it. So I really encourage you to look up recipes and buy a recipe book so you can do the jerky. So when we use that cannon, we were able to pipe these out into lovely strips, and then we dehydrated. It was about 3 hours. It might have been a little bit longer than that, but I kept watching and looking to make sure that when it got to the right amount of dehydration that we were able to take it out. And then after you're done with the jerky, you would probably keep that in the fridge for a couple of weeks. Otherwise, I would keep that in the freezer. And at that time, I did not have my vacuum sealer. So vacuum sealing those strips of jerky would make them last a lot longer. Okay, so I'm going to talk for a minute about freeze drying. This is brand new to me, but I know that you and I are always getting freeze dried foods a lot. And this is one way of preserving foods for very long-term storage. And it does work really well with high water content foods. It is less useful for high fat foods. Like I don't know that you can dehydrate butter, but I know that you can dehydrate ice cream because I've seen ice cream bars dehydrated with a freeze dryer. So it's very lightweight. You can take it along with you. You can rehydrate and use it, and you're preserving the nutrients the best of all the methods. And you may want to blanch before you dehydrate. The benefits, of course, is the storage, and the disadvantage, of course, is that this equipment is expensive. So we went together as a community in my little area with several families to buy this air freeze dryer that we're using. So these are the vegetables. This is the cauliflower that I brought in from the garden, and I got it all broken up into pieces, and then I put it through a blanching. And isn't that interesting that this is white, but the blanching water actually turned kind of green. So there is a lot of chlorophyll even in your cauliflower. I have some instructions on the packet for you for blanching. I did go to a website where they gave some really specific instructions, and then they gave a chart to show you how long to blanch each particular vegetable. I thought that was very useful. And when you blanch, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to stop the enzymes from acting at this point because we want long-term storage, especially if it's going in the freezer or going to be freeze-dried. And then after you take it out of this boiling water, you can dip it into cold water and then stop the blanching process as well. So we're really not trying to cook the food, we're just blanching the food. And then I put it into the freeze dryer. When it came out, I vacuum sealed just like you see here. So there's my cauliflower. It's all ready for a casserole or whatever I want to use it for. Here's freeze drying scrambled eggs. That is 2 dozen eggs in there. And I put the eggs into the freeze drying tray. These are what the trays look like. And when I took them out, this is how it came out. I just used a little plastic thing and I just chipped those eggs out of there. Isn't that amazing? And I can take those and reconstitute them with water and make scrambled eggs with them, or I could put them into the recipe. I have to look up to find out what the amount of water is I need to add to 1 egg, but I would just say this packet of 8 eggs, when I put it into the bowl, I want enough water to make it look like there's 8 eggs in the bowl. So it'll probably be a couple of tablespoons per egg. Okay? Yes.
So it says, so many recipes ask for sugar. What should we do about that? Because sugar is a preservative. Do you recommend any particular sites for healthier options, such as for jerky?
Yeah. So you can, when you look up jerky recipes, you can find recipes that don't have the sugar. My son went to Fleet Farm and he brought home some jerky spices. So we did try a couple of those. One of them was just full of chemicals. The one that just had sugar in it with regular herbs and spices, I used that one and I thought that one was good. Sugar is a preservative, so that can add longevity. If you're going to preserve your jerky in other ways, like you're going to vacuum seal it, put it in the freezer, don't worry about adding the sugar. It's not necessary. But sugar will make it last a little bit longer. So I generally, if you put the word paleo into the Google search before any recipe you're looking for, you usually will find recipes that are very low in sugar. And if they do have sugar, then they're going to be using more natural sweeteners. So that's one way to kind of parse through that. In my mind, when I'm freeze drying like this, I'm not using the sugar for my preservative. So I would probably then say, yes, I could sweeten with monk fruit or stevia or xylitol or something like that as well.
But it's not going to have preservatives.
But that's not going to give it any preservation quality, right? Yeah, it won't help to preserve it. All right, now bone broth. It's such an amazing thing for us nutritionally. So when I'm making bone broth, I will start with the animal bones. And when I get my cow, I just insist to the butcher, and I'm really insistent that I want all the bones. And I know I don't get all the bones because there is no way yeah, exactly. There's a lot of bones. So I don't know what they do with the bones, but this is what I do with them. So Jenny and I took these bones and we baked them ahead of making the broth. Why did we do that? Because that makes a darker stock and that pulls some more intense flavor out of it. So this is what they looked like when they came out of the oven. And then we put together our mirepoix, which is the French word for all of the other stuff that you're going to throw in there. And a particular recipe that I had found once didn't just add that to the broth. We baked this in the oven, drizzled with a little bit of olive oil for about an hour. And then when that came out, there was intensity of flavor there too. So that just made it a richer broth. As you get the bone broth going, you can start adding your herbs. This would be a great place for your dehydrated herbs. There you go. You just start sprinkling some tablespoons in. These are obviously my fresh herbs. I take them straight from the garden. I give them a quick rinse. They don't need much of a wash. There's parsley in there. There is rosemary in there. There is some basil in there. Whatever I have on hand is what goes in. And then just gentle simmering for about 24 hours. And then everything that I strain out of there goes away. Now here I am downstairs with the freeze dryer, and I'm getting this set up. So I'll just show you that video. Fill the trays and I've just stacked them up. I put 3 scoops, which I think is about 3 cups of broth into each one. I'm going to let it just sit here and cool a little bit more because it'll be thicker, and then I'm going to carry it over to the freezer and set it in there till it freezes, and then bring it back so that we can set it inside of the air or the freeze dryer. So the reason I freeze it ahead of time, number one, it will be less time and energy for the freeze dryer to actually dehydrate this. Number two, once I have it carefully into the freezer and it freezes, then I can handle those trays easily without spilling. And that is true for the broth and true for the eggs as well. And then once I get it into the freeze dryer, you close this lid, you latch it. There's instructions on the screen. It takes me a while. It took me a while to get used to the fact that there was always a prep time. So it would say start, but then you'd have to come back 15 minutes later because it had spent 15 minutes getting ready to start and you had to press start again. And the same thing when the freeze drying was done, and I would say done, then you had an option to warm the trays. And so then you have to press the button, wait, and then press it again. And then you can literally watch the temperature go from minus 30 degrees up to 72 degrees over about 10 minutes. Yeah, it's really amazing. And then when you open it, the condensation doesn't get onto those trays, and because it's room temperature.
They did all the work.
Because, right. Yes, because with the humidity, you could lose it. Now, with some foods, you could actually use a humidity probe. Like if you were freeze drying peaches, then you could stick the probe that has 2 ends into the peach, and it will run a little current, and it'll show you what your percentage of humidity is. But you can't really do that with the eggs or with the broth. So you really have to go by look and the feel of it. Fill the trays, and I've just okay. And then this is what they look like when they came out. And they kind of look like the eggs here. I'm chipping them out of there into a bowl, and then I move them into the Mylar bags that I had showed you before, and that's what I'm going to do.
Trays of frozen broth. I'm taking them out of the regular freezer, and now I'm going to be setting them here into the freezer chest of the freeze dryer. separate.
Okay, so this powder, I took the potato masher and I chopped it up in the bowl so that it would break down to a powder. And then after I got it into the Mylar bags, I finished crunching it up a little bit. I probably would take that and run it through my Vitamix and make it into just a really beautiful powder if I was going to pour it into a jar, and then I could use it like bouillon. Okay, all right. And this is cheese. This is just cheddar cheese going in there. It dehydrated, you guys. It came out like dry cheese. And so there it is in the jars that I had run through the dehydrator or the vacuum sealer. Okay, so that's the end of the slideshow.